Have you ever loved someone so deeply, yet felt them slipping away just because life pulled you in different directions? If you're tired, unmotivated, or ready to give up on learning English, or even on your own relationship, this story might feel uncomfortably close. In this video, I'll take you through one difficult week in the US, where distance tested my marriage, my patience, and my English, and somehow taught me everything I'd been avoiding. A week apart. Imagine sitting in a quiet apartment where even the warm yellow light feels exhausted for you. And suddenly you realize, silence can be louder than any noise. That was exactly my first day this past week, when my partner had to fly to another state for work. You think you're fine, until the door closes and a hollow space opens straight inside your chest. And somehow, that's also the moment your English motivation drops faster than your phone at 2% battery. Your brain loves drama. It amplifies tiny fears into full Dolby surround sound. You sit down with your slow, easy English listening, reading, speaking practice, telling yourself, okay, let's focus. But 5 minutes later, you're not hearing English anymore. You're hearing your heartbeat asking, is distance going to pull us apart? And hilariously, this is also when your brain picks the perfect moment to replay every old argument, awkward silence, and "are you okay?" conversation you've ever had. Psychology has a fun fact. When you feel threatened by loneliness, your brain reduces its ability to concentrate on academic tasks, like learning a language. It switches into survival mode. So you read a simple sentence like, "I miss you," yet it suddenly feels like a philosophical riddle. Instead of practicing English, you end up imagining dramatic scenarios worthy of a late-night soap opera. On that first day apart, I checked the calendar, checked the clock, checked my own face in the mirror, and realized something a little embarrassing. I'd been using English practice as an excuse to avoid my real feelings. I thought I'd lost motivation because English was hard. But no, my heart was tangled, and my brain was throwing a tiny emotional tantrum. People love to blame difficult listening clips, long vocabulary lists, or the American accent for their burnout, but sometimes the real reason is simply this: you miss someone but don't want to admit it. Science calls this emotional interference. I call it your heart throwing itself on the floor, kicking and screaming. But once I noticed it, something softened. This week might be difficult, yes, but maybe it would also teach me something no English learning video ever has: how to face distance without letting it drain me. The call that shook me. Picture this. You're reheating leftover pasta at midnight, half awake, half annoyed, and your phone suddenly lights up with your partner's name. You expect a sweet good night, maybe a quick update about their trip. Instead, their voice sounds tight, like someone trying to pretend everything's fine while their heart is pacing a marathon. And right there, over a shaky long-distance call, the week takes a turn you didn't see coming. There's something brutally honest about hearing someone you love hesitate. It's like your brain snaps from lazy mode to detective mode instantly. Every pause becomes suspicious. Every sigh feels like a hidden message. Even the way they say your name makes you wonder, wait, did something happen? Did I do something? Did the distance already start working its dark magic? Funny, isn't it? Humans can misinterpret a weak phone signal as emotional doom. Biology calls it hypervigilance. I call it your inner drama queen clocking in for work. We talked, slowly, cautiously. They told me the week apart was harder than expected. They felt overwhelmed, tired, stretched thin. But somewhere between the static and the insecurity, I heard something I wasn't ready for. I don't know why, but I feel distant. That word hit like a cold wave. Not angry, not blaming, just honest. And honesty is scarier than any argument. In moments like that, your English learning brain completely shuts down. Who cares about phrasal verbs when your relationship might be slipping into uncertainty? You're suddenly translating emotions instead of words. You're overanalyzing tone instead of vocabulary. It's wild how the mind works. You can understand a whole English sentence but completely mishear the feelings behind it. Psychology says emotional stress reduces working memory capacity, the part responsible for language processing. And wow, did mine go offline. I forgot every verb tense I knew. I could barely speak clearly in English or my own language. My fear spoke louder than grammar ever could. But here's the twist you don't expect. That uncomfortable conversation didn't break us. Broke my illusion. The illusion that everything was fine, as long as we didn't talk about our fears. Sometimes distance doesn't create problems. It reveals the ones already there. Hiding behind routines and busy schedules. By the end of the call, we weren't fully okay, but we were honest. And maybe honesty is the first step to understanding, both in love and in language. English in the silence. Here's a weird truth. Silence has an accent. When you're alone in the US, in an apartment that suddenly feels too big for one person, the quiet starts speaking louder than any English sentence you're trying to practice. On the second day apart, I open my notebook, ready to practice slow, simple English phrases. But every time I tried to read aloud, the room echoed in a way that made me feel like my own voice didn't belong to me. You know that feeling when you send a text and immediately regret it because it sounds cold, even though you didn't mean it that way? Distance turns every message into a mini exam. I typed, "How's your day going?" and stared at it like I was taking a TOEFL speaking test. Then I deleted it, rewrote it, added a smiley, removed the smiley because it looked needy. It's hilarious how a tiny bubble of text can suddenly feel like a high-stakes diplomatic negotiation. Language isn't just words. It's tone, timing, pauses, the whole invisible orchestra behind the message. And when you're learning English while also missing someone, the orchestra goes on strike. My partner replied short, simple, almost clipped. Doing okay. Busy. Totally normal. But to a brain running on insecurity, oh, it becomes Shakespeare-level tragedy. Busy suddenly means I'm drifting. Okay, means we need to talk. The human mind is amazing at turning neutral English into emotional Morse code. There's a psychological reason for this mess. When you're stressed, your brain switches to emotional prediction mode. It fills in gaps with fear instead of logic. That's why a normal English text looks sharp-edged and dangerous. It's not that the words changed. It's that your heart is reading them with trembling hands. I tried to practice speaking slow English sentences, clear pronunciation. But my voice cracked like I was talking to a stranger. I read simple lines like, "I'm learning to stay calm," but it sounded ironic, almost mocking. And honestly, it made me laugh. A tired, messy, lonely kind of laugh. Sometimes the absurdity is too real to, so I did something unexpected. I recorded a voice message instead of texting. Just a short, soft one. No script, no practice. Hey, I hope you're taking care of yourself. I miss your voice. I didn't overthink the grammar. And strangely, speaking English from a vulnerable place made it feel more real, more human. Like my emotions finally had room to breathe inside the language instead of being squeezed behind perfect sentences. Their reply came much later, but it was warm. I miss your voice too. And for a moment the silence softened. Not gone, but less sharp. Sometimes English practice isn't about mastering the words. It's about surviving the quiet spaces between them. A drive in the rain. There's something almost theatrical about driving alone in the rain. The wipers slam back and forth like they're arguing. The windshield blurs into watercolor streaks. And your brain? Oh, your dramatic little brain. Decides this is the perfect moment to dump every emotion you've ignored for the past month. That was me on day 4, cruising down a wet highway in the US, pretending I was just running errands, when really I was running from my own thoughts. Rain has a funny way of turning your car into a confession booth. You're trapped with yourself with no distractions, no background noise. No partner humming along to the radio. Just you and a stormy playlist that wasn't supposed to be emotional, but suddenly feels like a therapy session with too much bass. And that's when it hit me. Harder than the rain pounding on the roof. I hadn't lost motivation to practice English. I'd lost emotional bandwidth. Imagine your brain as a phone with too many apps open. Worry. Missing someone. Overthinking text messages. Replay of last night's call. Old arguments popping up like unwanted notifications. And then, finally, the English learning app. Of course it freezes. Of course it lags. Of course it feels impossible. It's not because English is hard. It's because your mental RAM is fried. Psychologists call this cognitive overload, but honestly it felt more like my heart forgot how to breathe. I tried listening to a slow English audio track while driving. Something simple, something I'd normally understand easily. But the words floated past me like raindrops sliding off glass. I heard them, but nothing stuck. My mind kept drifting back to my partner's quiet voice from the night before. The hesitation. The distance. The way they said, "I'm okay," like they were negotiating with their own exhaustion. And then something ridiculous happened. I misheard a simple English sentence from the audio. "You are stronger than you think." And for a split second I thought it said, "You are drifting apart." My heart nearly stopped. My rational brain was like, "Dude, that's not what the audio said." But my emotional brain? Oh, it was already staging a full Broadway production titled The Tragedy of Us. The rain got heavier. The road got quieter. And in that stillness, the truth finally surfaced. Distance wasn't the real enemy. Silence was. The silence between messages. The silence after the call. The silence in my chest when I tried to practice English and felt numb. That I pulled over for a moment, let the rain thrum on the roof and whispered something out loud, half to myself, half to the universe. Maybe learning English and learning love aren't that different. You mess up. You misunderstand. You try again. And just like that, something clicked. Not in a dramatic, life-changing way. More like a small, stubborn flame refusing to go out. Sometimes the rain doesn't wash things away. Sometimes it reveals what's been written under the dust. When hearts mishear. Have you ever misheard something so simple that you questioned your entire life? That was me on day 5. Not mishearing English this time, mishearing feelings. And trust me, emotional mishearing is 10 times louder and way more chaotic than messing up a vocabulary word. He started with a text from my partner. We need to talk later. Objectively, totally normal. People say it all the time. But to a heart that's been practicing long-distance anxiety for days? Oh no, that sentence becomes a cinematic trailer for disaster. My brain instantly translated it into the emotional equivalent of, prepare yourself. The sky is falling. Pack your belongings. Farewell forever. Drama level. Olympic gold medal. I spent the whole morning trying to distract myself with slow English practice. I read simple sentences like, he walks to the store. But my mind rewrote them into heartbreak haiku. He walks away. You are alone. The end. Honestly, if anxiety ever becomes a literary genre, my brain will be a best-selling author. Here's the psychology behind it. When you're stressed, your limbic system hijacks your perception. You don't hear words, you hear threats. You don't read messages, you read warnings. It's like your nervous system is wearing night vision goggles, searching for danger that isn't even there. A text meant to be neutral becomes a prophecy. Pause becomes a problem. A short reply becomes a side SO. When the call finally happened, I was already rehearsing my emotional speech, like a contestant in some melodramatic reality TV show. But the conversation took a surprising turn. My partner wasn't upset. They weren't distant. They weren't drifting away. They were overwhelmed, lonely, tired, and scared that I was pulling away. Wait, me? Pulling away. It was like a plot twist written by the universe itself. We had both been reading each other's messages with the same fearful translator. Two hearts mishearing each other in perfect synchronization. We laughed, awkwardly at first, then genuinely. It felt like someone had opened a window in a stuffy room. The air changed. The silence changed. Suddenly, English didn't feel heavy. Talking didn't feel like a test. For the first time that week, I understood what was happening. Not through language, but through clarity. We didn't magically fix everything in that one call. But we understood each other. And sometimes that's enough to calm the storm. Here's the wild part. The same thing happens in language learning. You mishear things. You panic. You guess wrong. But most mistakes aren't fatal. They're just misunderstandings waiting to be corrected. Love works the same way. When hearts mishear, they don't break. They just need someone to speak a little slower, a little clearer, and maybe a little more honestly. The small fix that worked. There's a funny rule of life no one warns you about. The bigger the emotional storm, the smaller the thing that actually calms it. Day 6 proved that in the most unexpected, almost stupidly simple way. After a week of overthinking, misreading texts, mishearing emotions, and turning English practice into a psychological battlefield, I stumbled onto a tiny trick that shifted everything. Both in my relationship and in my language learning, he started with a sentence I whispered to myself in the kitchen while staring at a half-burnt toast. What if I just do one small thing right today? Not fix the whole relationship. Not master English fluency. Not solve long-distance loneliness. Just one thing. Science calls this the micro-action principle. Your brain hates overwhelming tasks, so it responds better to ridiculously tiny steps. Steps so small your inner critic doesn't even wake up to complain. So I picked a micro-action for both love and English. For love, I sent my partner a voice note. Nothing dramatic. Just one honest sentence. I'm proud of you for handling everything this week. No overthinking tone. No rewriting. No emojis panic. Just human warmth. For English, I practiced one slow sentence out loud. Yes, only one. I'm learning to be patient with myself. It felt embarrassingly simple, like toddler-level practice. But sometimes the simplest English sentence is the one your heart needs to hear most. And here's the twist. Both tiny actions worked like magic. My partner replied almost instantly with a softness I hadn't heard all week. Thank you. I needed that more than you know. It wasn't a grand romantic gesture. It wasn't fireworks. But it was something better, connection. The real kind. The kind that feels like your shoulders finally drop after tensing for too long. Then something even stranger happened. My English practice didn't feel heavy that day. That one sentence, slow, gentle, steady, opened a door. I repeated it while doing dishes, while feeding the dog, while folding laundry. And without realizing it, I slipped back into English like it was a warm sweater instead of a battlefield. Here's what psychology says. Once your brain experiences one small win, it starts craving another. It rebuilds momentum. It rebuilds confidence. And in relationships, small wins create safety. The kind that makes honesty easier and distance less terrifying. So that night I called my partner. Not with fear, not with careful scripted English, not with emotional armor, just with presence. We talked like humans again. Not like anxious translators decoding each other's feelings. And that one conversation felt like a reset button. Maybe love isn't saved by grand speeches. Maybe English fluency isn't built by perfect grammar drills. Maybe both grow from the same place. The courage to take one small imperfect step when everything feels too big. And honestly, that tiny step saved my whole week. What distance finally taught me. Here's a plot twist no one sees coming. Distance doesn't always break you. Sometimes it becomes the world's most dramatic, inconvenient, absolutely uninvited teacher. By day 7, I realized something I probably should have learned way sooner. Distance isn't about miles. It's about meaning. And wow, did this week drag me through a crash course I didn't sign up for. You ever notice how your brain turns into a philosopher at the exact moment you're too tired for deep thoughts? That was me, sitting on the balcony with a cup of coffee that had already gone cold, watching the sun slip through the buildings like it was trying to sneak out unnoticed. And suddenly, out of nowhere, this goofy little truth hit me. You don't miss a person because they're far. You miss them because they matter. Simple. Annoyingly simple. So simple it should come printed on the back of cereal boxes. Distance exposed every crack I'd been ignoring. My habit of shutting down when I'm stressed, my fear of bothering my partner, my tendency to read messages like a bomb technician diffusing emotional explosives. But it also revealed something softer, something I didn't expect. Love grows louder when everything else goes quiet. Psychology backs this up. Researchers say emotional absence often teaches you more than emotional presence ever does. When the routine disappears, shared dinners, passing hugs, lazy conversations, you suddenly see what actually holds the relationship together. Spoiler: it's not the big moments. It's the tiny, unglamorous ones, like the way they say your name, the way they laugh when they're half asleep, the way they text "made it home" without thinking, the way their voice settles something inside you that you didn't know needed settling. Distance made those little things shine like neon signs, and strangely it helped my English too. When your emotions get stripped down to their essentials, your language does the same. I stopped trying to craft perfect messages. I stopped panicking over grammar. I started speaking like a real person instead of a walking textbook. Clear, simple, honest. English wasn't a performance anymore, it was connection. That evening we talked again. Not a dramatic reunion call, just a normal conversation with a little more warmth, a little more patience, a little less fear. And somewhere in that easy flow of words I realized distance had done what comfort never could. It forced us to communicate, not perfectly but truthfully. Maybe that's what distance teaches you. You don't grow apart unless you choose to stop reaching. You don't lose someone unless you stop showing up. And you don't fail at English or love unless you stop trying to understand. So yeah, distance didn't break us. It broke the silence we've been hiding behind. And honestly, that feels like a win. What love still needs, there comes a moment in every difficult season when the question quietly shifts from, "Why is this happening to me?" to "What is this trying to teach me?" And that shift, small, almost unnoticeable, is where healing begins. Not because the pain disappears, but because you stop running from it long enough to understand what it's been trying to say. In this section, we explore one of the most overlooked truths of emotional growth. Love is not something you simply receive. It's something you learn how to carry. And sometimes, love needs something from you too. Love needs patience, because your heart doesn't heal on demand. Love needs honesty, because pretending you're fine only makes the wound sink deeper. Love needs gentleness, because the parts of you that hurt the most are often the parts that have also tried the hardest. And above all, love needs time, more time than you want, but always exactly the time you need. You see, most people think love is supposed to rescue them, erase the past, or fix what's broken. But in reality, love doesn't always arrive as comfort. Sometimes it arrives as clarity. Sometimes it arrives as a mirror you've avoided. And sometimes it arrives as a quiet voice that whispers, "It's time to rise," even if you rise slowly. In this part of the video, you'll hear a series of gentle yet powerful sentences designed to reconnect you with the parts of yourself you've abandoned in the chaos. These lines are crafted to help you feel your way back to purpose, back to self-respect, back to that quiet inner strength that never truly left you. We'll talk about the moments when you doubt your own worth, the nights when you replay every mistake, and the mornings when getting out of bed feels like lifting a mountain. We'll address the fear of being misunderstood, the exhaustion of trying again, and the longing for anyone to say, "I see how hard you're trying." But most importantly, Section 8 is about reminding you of this. Love still needs you to keep showing up. Not perfectly, not fearlessly, just honestly, because even when life feels heavy, even when the future feels far away, even when hope feels too small to matter, there is a part of you that is still willing to move, still willing to learn, still willing to love. And that tiny willingness, that's where everything begins again.